My name is Thomas Granger. I'm 68 years old and I'm dying. The doctors call it idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. My lungs are turning to stone, slowly choking the life out of me. Breathing feels like dragging air through glass. I've got maybe months left if I'm lucky. But this story isn't about my illness. It's about something much worse. My son betrayed me, stole everything I ever worked for, and then left me to rot in a locked shed like an unwanted dog. I trusted him. I raised him. And he repaid me with cruelty that still leaves me breathless even more than this damned disease ever could. I wasn't always sick. For most of my life, I was strong. I built houses with my hands' real honest work. I raised David alone after his mother passed. I gave him everything I could: piano lessons, college funds, the roof over his head. When the coughing started a few years back, I didn't think much of it. But the diagnosis came like a gunshot to the chest. I was already alone, no wife, no siblings, and David was all I had left. I called him immediately. To his credit, he came home, moved in, took over the errands, said all the right things. "Don't worry, Dad. We'll get through this together." He brought in lawyers, helped set up a power of attorney. "Just until you're better," he said, smiling. I signed everything. What else could I do? I was tired, scared, and I trusted him. Of course I did. But something in his eyes shifted not long after. It was subtle at first: coldness when I asked for help, irritation when I needed something simple like water or a pillow. One day I noticed my checkbook was missing. My bank card, too. When I asked, he brushed it off. "Don't stress about that stuff, Dad. I've got it under control." Then came the visitors. Strangers, realtors mostly. They'd walk around the property while I sat there confused. When I asked David, he said they were just helping with tax assessments. The house wasn't even in my name anymore. I didn't realize it then, but he'd already transferred the deed. My entire life's work gone. Things moved fast after that. My medication disappeared one week. The food portions got smaller. Then one morning he wheeled me out of the house into the backyard. "Just for a little air," he said. I nodded, grateful though suspicious. But when I turned around and saw him padlocking the shed door behind me, my heart sank through the dirt. I screamed until I couldn't. He walked away. The stench of gasoline and rust filled the cramped space. There was a thin blanket, a jug of water, and a bucket in the corner. That was it. No windows, just darkness. That was the moment I realized my son didn't just want my money. He wanted me gone. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe David had some plan. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he'd come back in 5 minutes, apologize, and laugh it off like some bad joke. I waited, my old knees, throbbing lungs, rasping. But 5 minutes became 5 hours. Then night fell. The shed was cold, the kind of cold that creeps under your skin and settles in your bones. I tried to move, but the pain in my ribs flared. I was on the floor, barely able to sit up. I had no phone, no cane, nothing but that damn bucket and that thin blanket. I remember whispering his name over and over like a prayer. "David, David, please." Days passed. I lost track of how many. The water jug emptied. Hunger gnawed at me, but thirst was worse. My voice cracked when I tried to shout. Each breath was a battle, a dry wheeze followed by a sharp stab in my chest. Every time I drifted into sleep, I feared I wouldn't wake. Then one morning I heard footsteps. The sound of the lock clicking. My heart surged, relief, hope, desperation. But it wasn't David. It was his girlfriend, Melissa. She looked shocked to see me curled in a pile of rags, barely conscious. "Jesus, Tom, what the hell are you doing in here?" she gasped. I tried to speak, but only a croak came out. She rushed to get water, muttering curses under her breath. When she came back, she held a phone in one hand and a protein bar in the other. I devoured it like a starved animal, choking through tears. She didn't speak much. just said she thought I was in hospice care. David had told her I'd been placed somewhere nice and quiet. The next day, I was back in my own home, well, not mine anymore legally. Melissa had dragged David back and confronted him. I heard them shouting while I lay weakly on the couch. "You lied to me," she screamed. "You left your father to die." David didn't answer. He wouldn't even look at me. When she stormed out, he finally spoke. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "You were going to die anyway. I just sped things up. You always said you didn't want to suffer." I stared at him, stunned. There it was. The truth, plain and callous. My son had decided I was an inconvenience, a problem to solve. I wasn't a father anymore. I was dead weight. "I raised you," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I gave you everything." He didn't flinch, just shrugged. And that was when the fear gave way to something else, a deep, bitter fury. I may have been dying, but I wasn't dead yet. And he had no idea what kind of storm he'd just unleashed. I stayed quiet for days after that. I needed time not just to recover, but to think. Every cough reminded me of how little time I had left. But my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Rage has a way of clearing out the cobwebs. David assumed I'd forget, that I'd forgive, that my illness had dulled my instincts. He was wrong. While he strutted around the house, his house now planning renovations, flaunting his control, I took stock of everything he'd stolen: my pension, my savings, my tools, even my wedding ring. He wore my watch, slept in my bed, called himself homeowner when the neighbors dropped by. But Melissa kept her distance. Something in her had shifted too. I saw it in her eyes the few times she visited. She looked guilty, uneasy. One night she left a bottle of antibiotics on my bedside and didn't say a word. She knew. She just didn't know what to do about it. That's when I made my move. While David was out one afternoon, I pulled myself up, agonizing inch by inch, and rummaged through the hallway closet. Behind old jackets and board games, I found what I was looking for, the locked fireproof box I'd kept since Mary died, and inside it, untouched, was the one thing David hadn't known existed. A notarized copy of my real will, signed 2 years ago, before the coughing started, before David's greed infected everything. In it, I'd left everything to a veterans housing charity with clear instructions that David was to receive nothing unless he took care of me personally, willingly, and lovingly until my final breath. Any proof of neglect or abuse would void his claim. And thanks to that damn shed, I had all the proof I needed. Melissa was the key. The next morning, I asked to speak with her privately. At first, she resisted. "I don't want to get involved in your family drama," she said. But when I told her about the will and what David had done, her shoulders sagged. She sat down and for the first time really looked at me. "I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered. "You were the only one who opened that door," I said. "You saved my life. Maybe now you can save what's left of my dignity." She nodded slowly. The following week she returned with a small microphone and a hidden camera. She helped me set it up in the living room, aimed at the spot where David liked to brag about his hard-earned property. All I had to do was steer the conversation. It wasn't hard. "David," I rasped one evening as he passed by, "I hope you're proud." He smirked. "Proud of what, taking care of my old man, or finally getting what I deserve?" The camera caught every word, every smirk, every damning syllable. He had no idea what was coming. I sent the footage to my old attorney, Mr. Halberd. He'd drafted the original will back when Mary passed, and though we hadn't spoken in years, his voice cracked with anger when he watched the recording. "Tom, this is criminal. What your son's done isn't just morally rotten, it's elder abuse." He didn't waste time. That same week, legal proceedings were initiated. A quiet injunction froze all transactions involving the property bank accounts and my assets. David had no idea what hit him. One morning he came back from a jog to find a police car idling in the driveway and a plainclothes officer asking for me by name. He tried to talk his way out of it, of course. "My dad's old," I heard him say. "He's confused. Probably doesn't know what he's signing." But they weren't buying it. The evidence was too clear. Between Melissa's testimony, the footage, and medical records documenting my condition, along with a written statement I'd prepared, David was left stammering. He wasn't arrested, not yet. The court decided to investigate before pressing formal charges. But he was removed from the house, pending the outcome. For the first time in months, I stood in my own living room, alone, unafraid. My lungs still ached, but my soul felt lighter. I could breathe again. Melissa stayed behind for a few days to help me with meals and medication. She didn't ask for thanks, didn't even want to be seen as a hero. "I just didn't want to be part of something evil," she said one night, setting down a bowl of soup. I nodded. "You weren't. You helped end it." I'd be lying if I said it didn't break me to see David's things slowly being packed up, his sneakers, his guitar, the family photos he didn't deserve to touch. I raised that boy. I taught him to ride a bike, to tie his shoes. I held him the night he broke his arm falling from a tree. I gave him my everything, and he locked me in a shed. But now I had something stronger than grief, truth. And when the first court hearing came around, I requested to speak. Oxygen tank at my side, hands trembling, I stood before the judge and told them everything. Not just about the shed, about the years of love, the erosion, the cold, calculated betrayal. "I'm not here for revenge," I told them. "I'm here because my life still matters, because old doesn't mean useless, because love deserves better than this." The courtroom was silent. David didn't even look at me, just stared at the floor. Maybe in that moment, he realized what he'd lost. Not the money, not the house, but the one person who still saw the little boy inside him even after everything. Too late. David didn't come to the next hearing. His lawyer showed up alone, somber and silent. They filed a motion to contest the will, claiming mental incompetence on my part. It was laughable, especially with all the video evidence, my clear medical records, and Melissa's testimony backing me up. Still, it stung, my own son calling me crazy. But the court didn't buy it. Within weeks, the ruling was clear. The assets would revert to my name, and upon my death be transferred to the veterans' housing charity I had chosen years ago. David would get nothing, except a permanent note in his record, attempted elder exploitation. That meant he'd never work in finance again. His dream of becoming a real estate mogul was over before it began. Not prison maybe, but justice nonetheless. I thought that would be the end of it. But then one night he came back. It was just past midnight when I heard the knock. Soft, almost apologetic. I struggled out of bed, shuffled to the door, and looked through the peephole. David stood there, drenched in sweat, face, hollow eyes, desperate. "Dad," he said as I opened the door, "please, just hear me out." I should have slammed it in his face. I should have yelled, cursed spit. But I didn't. Maybe it was the last flicker of a father's heart that hadn't fully died. He stepped in slowly, hand shaking, sat down on the edge of the couch like a child caught stealing candy. "I messed up," he began, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you were going to die." I panicked. I didn't know what to do. "No," I said. "You knew exactly what you were doing." He nodded. Silent tears streamed down his face. "I was angry," he admitted. "Mom left. You worked all the time. I always felt like I came second. And when you got sick, I thought, maybe this was my chance to finally take control." There it was. Jealousy, grief, and greed all rolled into one festering truth. "I wanted to hate you," he said, "but then you fought back, and I realized you were still my father." He dropped to his knees beside me, sobbing. "I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry." I looked at him, really looked, and I saw the boy I once knew, scared, lost, desperate for love. But I also saw the man he became and the hell he put me through. Forgiveness wasn't something I could hand out like candy. It wasn't his right to ask for, not now. "I don't hate you," I said finally, "but I don't trust you. And I don't think I ever will." He nodded slowly, tears still falling. I just wanted to say goodbye." He stood, hesitated, then walked out the door. I never saw him again. After David left, silence settled in like a familiar blanket, cold but no longer suffocating. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there staring at the door, wondering how a father's love could bend so far without breaking completely. My body was failing, yes, but I still had enough left to know what mattered. And David, he mattered. That was the damn tragedy of it all. The days grew slower after that. My lungs worsened. Even walking from the bed to the chair felt like climbing a mountain underwater. Melissa visited sometimes, bringing groceries, adjusting my oxygen. She never asked about David again, and I never volunteered. Some wounds are best left closed. Then one morning the mail came. Among the envelopes was a small padded one. No return address. Inside, a simple gold chain with my wife's wedding ring. The same ring I thought David had sold months ago. And a note, just one sentence, scribbled in ink that looked smudged from tears. "I wanted to give back one thing you loved." I held that ring for hours, not out of sentimentality, but because it told me something words never could. Maybe guilt had finally sunk its claws in. Maybe it was too late for reconciliation, but not too late for him to feel the weight of what he'd done. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. A crack in the wall he'd built between us. I wore that ring on a chain every day after that. Not for Mary, though I missed her dearly. Not for David, but for me to remind myself that love is a risk, and sometimes it cuts deep. Weeks turned into months. Hospice came. I made peace with my choices, with my fate. I recorded videos for the charity. I signed over what little remained. I even wrote a short letter to David, not forgiving him, but asking him to never become that kind of man again. Not to anyone else. The night I died, I was alone. No son holding my hand, no farewell whispers, just the soft beep of machines, the hum of air through plastic tubing, and the quiet knowledge that I had fought to be seen, to be heard one last time. They found me with the ring clutched in my fist. The nurse later said I looked peaceful. I hope that's true, because in my final breath I wasn't thinking of the shed, or the betrayal, or the pain. I was thinking of the boy on his first bike ride, wobbling with joy, looking back at me and shouting, "Did you see that, Dad?" And yes, I saw. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I don't tell it to seek pity. I tell it so that someone somewhere might avoid what happened to me. If you're a parent, never give away your trust. Blindly, love should never mean surrendering your power. And if you're a child, caring for an aging parent, remember you're looking at the person who once gave up everything for you. Compassion is not weakness, it's legacy. Greed, resentment, and silence, they rot the soul. But truth, no matter how painful, can still grow something decent. I didn't get a happy ending, but I reclaimed my dignity. And in the end, that's more than most can say. So take care of your parents, or one day you'll wish you had, when it's far too late to knock on their door again. Thomas Granger.